Imagine this. She disappears. No explanation, no warning signs. Everything once familiar suddenly turns into silence. Your friends say, she just doesn't care anymore. Your heart says, wait a little longer. And your mind, it stays silent, just like she does. But the moment you're about to type, are you okay? Stop. Because this isn't just about love. This is a psychological game. And if you don't know where you stand, you'll end up as the pawn, not the player. This video is for the men who are tired of chasing, of sending messages then deleting them, of living in constant doubt about whether they're enough. For those who've let someone else control their emotions with nothing more than a single scene and no reply. You're about to enter a journey that isn't just about women, but about emotional power, maturity, and the greatest victory of all, winning over yourself. Don't miss a second, because once you understand what's about to be shared, you'll never have to chase anyone again. 1. She's not silent because she doesn't care. She's testing you. James is a kind, ambitious software engineer living in Manhattan. He once fell deeply in love with Eliza, a beautiful, sharp, slightly mysterious woman. Their relationship began like a romantic movie, texting through the night, cozy dates in small cafes in Brooklyn. But one day, Eliza suddenly stopped replying. No anger, no reason, just silence. James's friends told him, she disappeared like that because she doesn't care. Let it go. But James didn't rush to believe it. He's not the type to react impulsively. He stepped back, observed. He didn't beg, didn't plead, and just as he suspected, a week later, Eliza sent a message. I've been thinking about you more than I expected. Other perspective. Sometimes women aren't silent because they've moved on. They're silent to test you, to see whether you lose your direction without them. Silence is how they measure your inner strength. This isn't a game, it's a natural instinct. A weak man will rush to call, text, even beg. A strong man will stay calm, steady, and refuse to be manipulated by someone else's emotional swings. And that steadiness, even when unspoken, is what makes women both curious and drawn in. 2. Silence is the counterattack of a mature man. David is a young entrepreneur building his first tech company in Austin. He was once engaged to Claire, the woman he thought was his missing piece. They had picked out wedding rings, booked the venue, and planned a future together. But just a few weeks before the wedding, Claire called and abruptly called it off. No anger, no explanation. Most people would have fallen apart, drinking, posting sad quotes on social media, but not David. He didn't text, didn't ask why, didn't beg for what had already slipped away. Instead, he returned to the gym every morning at 6 a.m. He buried himself in work, growing his company. And 6 months later, when Claire sent a vague apology, David was no longer the same man. He read her message and never replied. Other philosophy. Silence isn't weakness. It's a quiet but powerful declaration. I'm okay. In fact, I'm better. And I don't need to prove it to anyone. A mature man doesn't fight with words. He doesn't need to win every argument because he's focused on winning at a higher level, preserving self-respect, dignity, and becoming the best version of himself. 3. Every time you react, you give away control. Mark works in the entertainment industry in Los Angeles, polished, successful, and deeply in love with his girlfriend. But his love came with emotional instability. Every time she didn't reply to his texts for a few hours, Mark grew anxious. If his second message was left unread, he'd call. If she didn't pick up, he'd drive across the city just to make sure everything was okay. At first she found it sweet, But over time it became exhausting. She no longer felt free. She felt monitored, no longer loved, but emotionally smothered by a man who couldn't manage his inner world. Eventually, she left. Not because she stopped loving him, but because she couldn't love a man who constantly overreacted and devalued himself through every little emotional misstep. Other perspective. Each time you react impulsively, you're not just showing weakness, you're teaching them how to control you. A few delayed replies, a couple of ignored texts, and suddenly they own your emotional state. A man of composure doesn't react with feelings, he responds with thought. And sometimes the best response is no response at all. That's when you regain control, not over them but over yourself. 4. A high-value man never crumbles under someone else's silence. Andre, a street photographer from Chicago, once dated a woman he truly invested in emotionally. The relationship started off promising, until one day she vanished. No text, no goodbye, just silence. Ghosting isn't new in this generation, but pain still hurts, especially when the love was genuine. But instead of spiraling into self-blame or texting late-night "Are you okay?" messages, Andre chose silence. He didn't send a single message, didn't make a single call. Instead, he signed up for guitar classes at a local art center and started a vlog documenting his journey. 3 weeks later, she messaged him, "I saw your yesterday cover. It's beautiful." But by then, Andre had stepped into a whole new chapter of life. She came too late, not because he wanted revenge, but because he had grown. Other takeaway: silence isn't punishment, it's space, the kind that allows you to grow. It's a message without words. I don't need you to exist. I found myself in your absence. And within that space, you become the kind of man she looks back at, but may never reach again. 5. The more she senses your weakness, the further she pulls away. Alex was a typical software engineer, smart, hard-working, and warm-hearted. He once loved a woman named Jenna, a deep relationship, but filled with emotional friction. Every time they had a disagreement, even when it wasn't his fault, Alex was always the one to apologize first. He even apologized, just because Jenna seemed upset, even when he didn't know why. He believed patience and humility were the keys to a long-lasting relationship. But in reality, every time he lowered himself without reason, Jenna grew less interested. She became distant, cold, and eventually walked away without any clear explanation. Later, Alex realized, love doesn't mean always backing down. Women don't leave because you're not good enough. They leave when you're no longer the man they feel compelled to look up to. When you lose your boundaries and become an emotional doormat. Other perspective. A man who's always ready to beg isn't lovable. He's forgettable. Excessive softness doesn't make you more endearing. It makes you replaceable. You don't need to pretend to be an alpha, but don't lose your spine either. True value isn't about pleasing others all the time. It's about knowing when to say, I deserve better than this. 6. When you don't react, doubt begins to grow in her. Natalie was an intelligent, independent woman who was used to holding the upper hand in relationships. She believed that if she pulled back a little, the guy would start chasing, texting non-stop, asking if she was okay. And with all her past partners, it worked. Then she met Daniel, a quiet, confident man living in Denver. When Natalie began pulling away, responding late to texts, pretending to be busy to seem mysterious, Daniel didn't react. He didn't ask, "What's wrong?" He didn't text, "You seem different." One day passed, then 2, then a week, and Natalie started feeling uneasy. Not because she had lost interest, but because, for the first time, she wasn't in control. She started thinking, did I misread him? Does he not need me at all? Other philosophy. Reaction is a shield used by those who haven't truly understood themselves, but silence, that's the mark of inner strength. A man who isn't swayed by games, who doesn't rush to explain or prove, is a man who forces others to pause and reevaluate. And sometimes, what draws her back isn't love, but the fear that she's lost something rare. 7. Silence makes her lose control. Maria and Tom were once a picture-perfect couple in Seattle. After they broke up, everyone assumed there'd be a quick comeback. Maria thought so too. She started posting stories, coincidentally with another man in the frame, dim lighting, cocktails, a half smile. Everything designed to trigger jealousy. But Tom didn't react. No messages, no reactions, no blocking, no stalking. He kept working, kept going to the gym, living as if no one had just tried to play mind games with him, and that confused Maria. A few days later, she was the one who sent a message. "Hope you're doing well." The message said nothing specific, but it spoke volumes about who was losing control. Other perspective. Don't mistake silence for apathy. Sometimes it's the most powerful response. A mature man doesn't fall for emotional traps clumsily laid out. Women can control those who react, but they feel lost in front of those who don't. And that confusion, that's when the balance of power starts to shift. Timely silence doesn't make you cold, it makes you untouchable. And that's where real attraction begins. 8. She's not testing you because she misses you. She just needs reassurance. One late night in Miami, Nathan's phone buzzed with a message from Eliza, his ex, whom he hadn't spoken to in 2 months. The text read, "I randomly thought of you tonight. Not sure why." Nathan looked at the message, took a deep breath, and put the phone down. He didn't reply. Not because he was still hurt, but because he had moved on. The next morning, Eliza called. No words of love, no apology, just silence, waiting for him to react. But Nathan knew better. This wasn't a message from the heart. It was a test, a probe to see if she still had an emotional hold over him. And when there was no response, what bothered Eliza wasn't losing Nathan, it was losing her power over him. Other takeaway. Miss you texts don't always come from real longing. Sometimes they come from an ego that's frustrated it no longer shakes you. And in that moment, how you respond, or choose not to, determines your place in her mind. Are you the guy who's still hoping? Or the man she once had, but will never get back? The difference lies in one thing, the strength to stay silent. 9. When she gets no reaction, she starts chasing. Jason was a quiet man, but full of determination. After years of working for others, he decided to start his own business in renewable energy in Phoenix. When his girlfriend, whom he loved sincerely, suddenly broke up without a clear reason, Jason didn't beg, didn't look for explanations. He simply went silent. Not because he wasn't hurt, but because he knew if love required begging to survive, then it was no longer healthy. He returned to his startup project, worked day and night, ate properly, exercised regularly. Not to forget her, but to remember himself. A few months later, Jason's company was featured in a local newspaper article. That morning, his phone lit up with a message. "I saw you in the paper, proud of you." He looked at the message and smiled, not out of pride or anger, just no longer feeling anything, because the man she left behind no longer existed. Other philosophy. They don't appreciate you when you're still chasing, waiting, clinging. They only begin to see your worth when you're no longer there to be chosen. When you walk away, not with bitterness, not with noise, not looking back, that's when you leave the deepest impression. Silence isn't just a reaction, it's a quiet revolution inside you. 10. When she starts doubting herself, that's when you have the power. Emily was the kind of woman who always believed she had control in relationships. When she broke up with her boyfriend, Daniel, an architect in Houston, she was certain he'd come back. In her mind, the script was familiar. A few days of silence, then a message like, "I still love you," or at least a late-night call. But Daniel didn't do that. He didn't call, he didn't text, he didn't watch her stories. Instead, he booked a solo trip to Portugal, sharing a photo of himself on the cliffs of Lisbon, a sunset behind him and a peaceful smile on his face. Emily saw it, and for the first time, she wasn't sure. She began asking herself, did I make a mistake? Did I let go of something truly good? And that's the moment the power shifted. Not when you retaliate, not when you try to prove your worth, but when you calmly walk away and leave the other person wrestling with doubt. Other insight. The one who clings is the one who feels empty. The one who walks free is the one who knows he is whole. Mature love doesn't scream, "Don't leave me." It's a quiet departure carried by strength, forcing the other to confront the hardest question. Did I just lose someone I never really deserved? And if they begin to doubt themselves, it means you've already won, without even fighting. 11. She thought you'd still be there, but you're gone. Julie and Chris had been in a relationship for 3 years. Every time they fought, Julie would be the first to go silent. She would wait for Chris to break the ice, text, call, even drive to her place to make peace. And every time, he did. Julie got used to the idea that Chris would always be there. Until one day, he wasn't. They fought again. Julie disappeared like always, but this time Chris didn't send an apology, didn't call late at night, didn't show up like in the movies. He simply disappeared from her life, for real. A week later, Julie messaged, no reply. She called, no answer. She tried again. "I'm sorry, I just needed space." Still no reply. Chris didn't create a breakup scene on social media. He didn't post sad quotes or tell mutual friends. He just quietly stepped away from a relationship where his presence wasn't truly valued. Other lesson. You can't keep standing at a door that someone else isn't sure they want to open. Your presence has value, but only when it's respected. Walking away in silence isn't revenge. It's the most graceful goodbye you can give someone who didn't know how to keep you. And sometimes that silence becomes the loudest echo in their mind, long after you're gone. 12. She checks in, but won't admit her mistake. Anna and Ryan broke up after nearly a year of dating. No drama, just a gentle sentence from her. "I think we both need space." Ryan didn't beg, didn't ask why. He simply nodded and walked away, quietly. 2 months later, Anna started scrolling through Ryan's social media. One night, she liked an old photo. Not a major one, just a shot of him standing on a mountaintop, smiling after a long hike. Nothing special, but for her, it was a test. Does he still care? Will he respond? But Ryan didn't like it back. Didn't text, didn't watch her story to signal anything. He continued living his life without her presence, in a calm way that was hard to comprehend. Anna felt a little shaken, not because she still loved him, but because she no longer had control. Those small interactions weren't from the heart. They came from an ego desperate for validation. Other perspective. Not every return means love. Sometimes it's just a reflex from an ego that hasn't accepted it was once abandoned. You must be clear-headed enough to know the difference. What's real regret? And what's just the bruised pride looking for a final signal? A mature man doesn't respond to vague signals because he knows his worth deserves clarity. 13. Women don't come back for you. They come back to see if they still control you. Matt was a handsome bartender in Las Vegas, with a heart far softer than his tough exterior. After a silent breakup, he received a message from his ex. "I miss those nights we stayed up talking till morning." Matt's heart skipped a beat. He smiled, thinking, maybe it's not over yet. Within 2 minutes he replied, "Me too, I still think about you." But there was no reply. Worse, he found out he'd been blocked. No stories, no comments, no way to reach her. It took Matt a few days to realize she didn't text because she missed him. She just wanted to know if she still had influence over him. And when Matt replied instantly, she got her answer, and the game was over. Other philosophy. There's a clear difference between someone who truly wants to come back and someone who's just checking if they still have emotional power over you. Someone who genuinely regrets losing you won't send a vague message and disappear. They won't use ambiguity as a weapon. The more you react to those weak signals, the deeper you fall into the trap they barely bother to hide, the trap of emotional control. A wise man doesn't answer the soft knock of the past. He only opens the door if the one knocking is ready to walk back in, with their whole heart, not just their ego. 14. When she truly regrets it, she'll make it clear. Kevin, a fitness trainer living in Chicago, once loved a woman named Vanessa. Their relationship was passionate, but filled with frequent conflict. One day, Vanessa ended it. No clear reason, just, "I need time to find myself." Kevin didn't argue. He respected her decision and walked away in silence. 3 months passed, no messages, no interaction on social media. Then, one autumn afternoon, his phone buzzed with a simple text. "You're the man I should never have let go." No. Hey. No emojis. No pretend casual opening. Just one honest sentence. No walls, no games. This time it wasn't her ego speaking, it was her heart. Other insight. Real regret doesn't hide behind vague texts. It doesn't show up as, "Remember that night?" or "I saw your new post." When a woman truly regrets losing you, she doesn't send signals, she sends truth. And that truth, even in just one sentence, carries the weight of all the words she never said. Unfortunately, those words usually come when you no longer need to hear them. And that's exactly what makes them so powerful and so late. 15. She hates the feeling of losing. Cindy was the type of woman who always had control. At work, in social settings, and especially in love, she always made sure she was the one holding the reins. With her ex, Jake, nothing changed. She controlled the pace of the conversation, pulled back when she felt he loved her more, and once told a friend, "If anyone's gonna leave first, it'll be me, not him." But then Jake began to change. No more morning texts, no more nightly check-ins, and one day he vanished completely. No posts, no online status, no scene. Cindy started to panic. Not because she wanted him back, but because for the first time she no longer had control. The quiet loss made her uneasy enough to ask herself, did I just let go of a man who actually mattered? Other reflection. Control freaks always believe they're winning, until the other person quietly stops playing. You don't need to argue to come out on top. Sometimes, all you have to do is walk away at the right moment, and let your absence speak for itself. Leaving quietly isn't weakness. It's the clearest way to say, I'm not playing a game where someone else insists on being king. 16. The quieter you get, the more anxious she becomes. Vera, a financial analyst in San Jose, always believed that in relationships, the one who stays silent longer is the one who holds power. After a small argument with her boyfriend, Lucas, a fitness coach, she decided to teach him a lesson by disappearing completely. No replies, no calls, no social media activity. In Vera's mind, Lucas would panic, send desperate texts, maybe even show up at her door like he used to. But 3 weeks passed, and nothing. Lucas didn't react. He didn't try to reach out. He kept teaching his morning classes, posting workout videos, living life as if no one had just attempted an emotional Cold War on him. Vera started to feel uneasy. She wasn't sure anymore. Was he sad, busy, or had he truly forgotten her? The only person lost in that silence was her. Other philosophy. You don't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes the most powerful move is stepping back, with no drama, no explanation. Your presence can leave an impact. But your absence, if it appears at the right time, becomes a mirror that forces the other person to face themselves. Silence doesn't make you weaker. It makes them ask, how did I lose someone I thought would always be there? 17. When you don't reply, panic begins. Amanda and Josh had broken up in silence. No drama, no tears, just a slow fading of messages until there was nothing left. Sometime later, Amanda started to feel empty. One winter night, she texted Josh, "I miss the smell of coffee at your place." A message full of suggestion, meant to stir memories, and hopefully a response. But Josh didn't reply. 2 days later, she called. No one picked up. A week after that, she texted again, "Are you still there?" And the answer was silence. No one was there anymore. At least not the version of Josh she once believed would always come back when she called. Amanda couldn't understand why. In her mind, just one signal should have been enough to pull him back. But now, Josh's absence was the one thing she couldn't handle. Other insight. Not replying isn't a sign of weakness. It's a silent declaration. I'm no longer willing to trade my self-respect just to please someone who didn't choose me. Reactions are what people expect from you, to prove they still have control. But when you stop reacting, that's when the balance shifts entirely in your favor. Not because you're heartless, but because you understand the power of timely silence. 18. She starts trying everything to make you react. Henry, a mechanical engineer in Detroit, had a 2-year relationship with a woman named Rachel. After the breakup, he didn't blame her, didn't beg. He simply returned to work, hobbies and quiet morning walks by the lake. He vanished from her emotional radar. A few weeks later, Rachel started stirring things up. First came the photos with another guy, posted right at the times Henry was usually online. Then came the cheeky emojis and under his old posts. And finally, the killer move. She commented on one of his photos with a loaded line, "Those were good times, huh?" As if trying to revive a shared memory. But Henry didn't reply. He didn't delete. He didn't block. He didn't even see it. He kept living as if those signals were just small ripples on a peaceful lake. Other philosophy. When they realize they no longer affect you, their ego rebels. They start using soft provocation, not to come back, but to test. Do I still make you flinch? And if your answer is no, you've already won. Not because you're cold, but because you've risen above the cycle of manipulation. Winning in love doesn't mean making someone return. It's when you no longer need them, and don't resent them either. You've simply outgrown them. 19. When you stop reacting, she begins to question her own worth. One evening in a Brooklyn bar, I sat with a friend, Ethan, a calm, quiet street photographer. He had just ended a nearly 1-year relationship. No arguments, no begging, just a long silence that no one filled. A few weeks later, Ethan's ex-girlfriend ran into me by chance. After a few cocktails, she said, "He's unlike anyone I've met. It's like, he doesn't need me. He's not sad, not even angry. I looked her in the eyes and replied, that's because he really doesn't. It wasn't bitterness. It was liberation. Ethan wasn't the kind of man who pretends to be okay only to cry behind closed doors. He was genuinely okay. And that, more than anything, forced her to stop questioning him and start questioning herself. Other insight. When you stop reacting, you force the other person to turn the camera inward. No more scapegoating. No more emotional manipulation. No more control. And in that moment, when they begin to doubt their own value, it's not to hurt them, but to set you both free from a dynamic that was never balanced. Truth can hurt the ego, but sometimes it's the very medicine needed to finally let both people go. 20. When she realizes she no longer has a chance, that's when she truly wants to come back. Ryan was a civil engineer living in Salt Lake City, a quiet man, but fiercely grounded. He once deeply loved a woman named Lauren, but after a long string of disagreements, she ended things, saying, "I need to explore who I really am." Ryan didn't chase. He didn't send long emails. He didn't make a dramatic goodbye video. He didn't type, "I still love you." He just went quiet, packed up his emotions, and walked away. A month later, he moved to Colorado, focused on a major building project, and slowly began a new relationship. Calm, mature, and peaceful. 3 months later, Lauren sent him an email. 3 pages long. No more pride. No more mixed signals. She wrote about her mistakes, her regrets, and realizing too late his true worth. But Ryan didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because he'd simply gone too far forward to turn back. Other philosophy. By the time they're ready, you're no longer there. And that's the reward for those who stay true to their own value. You don't need to become a chaser just to be recognized. Sometimes just silence, standing up and walking away with self-respect is all it takes for them to understand what they've lost. But by the time they finally understand, you may no longer need to hear it. 21. Emotional detachment is the greatest transformation. I once met a man named Marcus at a business conference in Dallas. He was a successful entrepreneur, calm, well-mannered, the kind of man you'd never guess had been through a divorce. But he shared that story with me. No bitterness, no blame, just a simple truth. Marcus had been in a marriage for nearly 10 years with a woman he once deeply loved. But over time, things changed. The respect faded. The connection eroded. All that remained were repeated emotional wounds, silence, blame, and endless arguments without resolution. One morning he woke up and realized, every time I stay, I betray myself. He didn't leave in anger. He didn't shout, "I can't take it anymore." He just packed a few things, left a short note, and quietly walked out the door. Other message? Letting go is not surrender. It's the moment you become mature enough to understand that you cannot change someone, and there's no reason to stay in a relationship that makes you smaller every day. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you've stopped feeling. It means you've become strong enough not to let someone else's emotions control your life. And that is the greatest transformation a man can experience. 22. A man who doesn't need validation cannot be controlled. During a conversation at a gym in Cleveland, I met Jay, a fitness trainer with an impressive physique and a calm smile. He told me a story I'll never forget. I used to be that guy who sat around for hours texting a girl who never replied, staying up late, waiting for a scene, living for her online status. Now it's different. I've got a stable job, a solid body, and, most importantly, my self-respect back. She still follows me on Instagram, but I don't follow her anymore. Jay didn't say it with arrogance. He simply shared it like a man who had climbed out of an emotional pit where many are still stuck. He didn't hate her. He just realized that he had once handed over too much emotional power, and now he never would again. Other perspective. When you live off validation from others, you become predictable, vulnerable, and easy to manipulate. But when you no longer need it, when you know who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it, the very people who once made you anxious start paying attention. Attraction doesn't come from trying to impress. It comes from not needing to impress anyone. And when you reach that point, you become someone who can't be controlled, because you've already mastered yourself. 23. Ending. You don't need to win her. You need to win yourself. I have a friend named Marcus who lives in Los Angeles, a young director with a sensitive soul and a heart that's been broken more than once. He once loved a girl deeply, placing all his trust and hope in that relationship. But then she left, taking with her both the promises and the reasons. Marcus didn't chase. He didn't post sad quotes. He didn't send a final text. Instead, he poured all his energy into work, creativity, and healing himself. 6 months later, on a Saturday night, she called. On the other end of the line was the sound of tears. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I did that. I miss you." Marcus looked at the phone screen. His eyes were calm. No anger, no heartbreak. He simply smiled, put the phone down, and kept writing the script for his next film. Final reflection. You don't need to win in love. You don't need someone to admit they were wrong. You don't need them to come back just so you can say, "I told you so." The real victory is when you keep your self-respect, when you don't trade your dignity for temporary emotion, when you can hear an apology you no longer need, when you can forgive without needing to reconcile. That's when you know, I've already won, not over her, but over myself.